Angus Brendan McNeill.
Mr. Speaker. When we were in talks with the Prime Minister before, probably a month, 6 weeks ago, she was adamant, absolutely adamant. It was no deal, it was her deal or revocation. Now the government has pivoted to extension. What's the change of position? Why didn't they stick to their no deal, her deal or revocation? Her deal's dead, and there's now between no deal and revocation.
Well, actually, what the Prime Minister was saying was that she was concerned that the House was not giving due consideration to her negotiated proposal. And what she was pointing out to the House is that the government is determined to fulfil on the will of the people expressed at the referendum, and that the alternatives to either a negotiated deal such as her deal and not fulfilling on the will of the people was to leave the EU without a deal, which nobody believes would be in the best interests of the country.
Sir Christopher Chope.
Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend has said that we would need to have a clear purpose in order to extend Article 50, particularly if that was for a short period of time. Can my right honourable friend tell the House whether she believes that a change of chief negotiator would amount to such a clear purpose?
Well, my honourable friend gives me the opportunity to pay tribute to the excellent work of the civil service, who have really spent the last 2.5 years above and beyond the call of duty, so many of them focused on delivering on the referendum, and I think there's something to be proud of.
Sandy Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Leader of the House not recognise that the Prime Minister will not be able to pass a deal simply with the support of the members, the honourable members that are sitting behind her? And if she had not fully recognised that until this evening, surely she does now. And that if there is going to be any deal that we can take to the European Parliament, the European Commission, the European Council, in order to try to secure any sort of deal other than a no deal Brexit, she is going to have to negotiate a deal with members on this side of the House. Not just talk to members on this side of the House, but negotiate a deal with members on this side of the House.
My right honourable friend has indeed reached out to members across the House, and the honourable gentleman knows that full well.
Peter Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, we see a government that is happy to use the most arcane and incomprehensible procedures of this House when it suits it, to frustrate the will of the House, but to ignore them when it suits the government. The honourable member for Rhondda, who is no longer in his seat, pointed out the government seemed determined to cast aside the time-honoured tradition that if you put forward a motion once and lose it, it's gone. Surely it's another time-honoured tradition that if the government have already decided, as they clearly have, when there will be this crucial third vote, it would be courtesy to tell the House now rather than keep it till some other time. But can the Leader of the House give a commitment that every member of the government will honour another time-honoured tradition, that when the meaningful vote is brought back and the discredited deal is rejected yet again, will the government commit to honouring the tradition of 3 strikes and they're out?
Well, I find it a bit odd that the honourable gentleman suggests that we're using arcane procedures. Well, what we're actually doing is using business motions and motions of the House, and those are by no means arcane. This is merely fulfilling on the commitment that the Prime Minister gave to ensuring that the House could first of all vote on whether it wished to take no deal off the table, and then could vote on whether it wished to request an extension to Article 50 from the European Union.
Marcus Fitch.
Mr. Speaker, can the Leader of the House say whether there will be some time to debate one aspect of the withdrawal agreement that has been proposed, which I think is quite interesting, but it really is an encapsulation of much of what's wrong with the government's attitude to the House in describing it, which is the backstop proposals for how the technicalities of customs work at the border. It is silent on VAT. It requires the EU's permission to be workable and compliant with the customs code in the EU, and it requires them to effectively agree to what the law of our borders would be. So it goes against the statement the government keeps making that we have control of money, borders and laws through the withdrawal agreement. How can we identify this and explain it more more fully than the government has done today?
Well, what I can say to my honourable friend is I'm sure that there will be DexU ministers on the front bench tomorrow, and that might be an appropriate time to raise his very specific questions then.
Can the Leader of the House tell me, because as a new MP I've lost my circus programme, what time will the close of play be tomorrow, or will there be an extension?
So it is the motion that's been laid suggests that the House will carry on its debate until 5 p.m, but it is a matter for the House to agree.
In other words, it's an amendable motion. Thank you. Alison Thewlis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask the Leader of the House if it's still the convention that if a government minister breaks a three-line whip, they are expected to resign.
Well, what I would say to the honourable lady is that whipping is a matter for each chief whip, not a matter for me. I'm so pleased.
Alan Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that Parliament has rejected leaving the EU in a no-deal scenario, the Leader of the House outlined that tomorrow we get to debate have a debate on extending Article 50, but she has also told us tonight that the government can't really go back to the EU and ask for that extension under Article 50, Article 50 unless they have a proper deal agreed in Parliament. So what is she doing to actually bring forward mechanisms for Parliament to decide what they want to go back to the EU with in terms of that extension of Article 50, instead of this nonsense of another meaningful vote in the deal that we've already rejected twice?
Yeah.
Well, I think perhaps the honourable gentleman has misunderstood. What I've said is that if the House should vote to extend Article 50, then the Prime Minister has said that she will indeed go to the EU and seek their agreement to that. But the fact is that it is only a request. The government is not able to insist upon it because it does require the agreement of all 27 EU members. So whilst we can request the extension on behalf of the House, and certainly will do so, if the EU agrees to such an extension, then the government will bring forward legislation. But the point that my right honourable friend was making is that we cannot insist on that extension.
Neil Gray.
After Aberdeen's brilliant result against Rangers last night, it was probably only right to give Kilmarnock a wee win. Last night, the Prime Minister and the Leader of the House both gave a commitment that if no deal was backed by this House as a way forward, then that would become government policy. The extension of that principle and that logic, which is very important now after what the honourable member from Wickham has said, it means that the government should be adopting no deal as its policy now. So why is the first item of business tomorrow not a statutory instrument removing the 29th of March as the exit day from legislation?
That's right. The Prime Minister gave a commitment to allowing the House to decide if it wanted to decline to leave the European Union without a deal, and the House did make that decision, and that subsequent to that, the Prime Minister would give the House the opportunity to decide to extend Article 50 with the clear commitment to making that request should the House decide to make it. But the honourable gentleman will appreciate that the only way to avoid the legal default, which is still that the United Kingdom leaves the European Union on the 29th of March with or without a deal, is to put in place an alternative deal, or indeed to extend Article 50, and I have merely made the point, which is the fact, that that in itself does require the agreement of all 27 EU member states.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues.